Mao now held more power than any leader since the emperors. He promised a China that could stand on its own feet alongside the other world powers. Mao's version of communism was to be the foundation for a purer, fairer, more progressive state than the one that had emerged in the Soviet Union. It was to be a revolution in which the peasants were to take the leading role. Activists would explain the ideas of class identity and class struggle to every village and workplace and incite the peasants to speak up against enemies of the people. Chinese were now bombarded with propaganda. Traveling projection teams took films to the remotest areas, bringing the message of active socialism. As the revolutionary program began, the peasants were the first to benefit. They were granted the land reform they'd wanted for so long. It was the party's plan that they should seem to make the change themselves. Speak Bitterness meetings were held in which the landlords and others linked to the defeated nationalists were confronted and denounced by the peasants.
We were told to get together and ask the landlords to return land to us. We stated how much they should return and how they should return it. There was a denunciation meeting every day.
Local party secretary Luo Shifa helped whip up feeling in his village.
The first thing we had to do was to bring down the landlords. What we did was persuade the tenant farmers to denounce them. At the public meeting, they would explain how they couldn't afford to pay back the rent every year, or how they had to take out high-interest loans to pay it off. People around the stage sympathized with the poor peasant stories, and they'd weep.
政府接受了群众的要求，判决罪犯李志仁的死刑，坚决与人民为敌的反革命分子一定受到人民严厉的制裁。
Hundreds of thousands were killed.
经过轰轰烈烈的土地改革，他们的苦日子从此一去不回头了。今天他们真正的翻身做了土地的主人。
The class warfare was less vicious in the cities. The communists tried to win the support of the managers and technicians the revolution needed to keep the mills and plants running, and to assimilate the capitalist owners who had not left with the nationalists. Propaganda showed businessmen handing the deeds of their companies over to the state, and then celebrating with improbable glee the new socialist dawn. Zhen Guodong, district party secretary, heard what was really happening.
By day, they pretended to support the party. But at night, behind closed doors, they'd gather their families around them and cry, bemoaning the fact that everything they'd worked for would soon be lost.
我们这个事业长不了了。这些情况呢
When we realized this, we decided to recruit capitalists who sympathize with the party.
培养工商业资本家的骨干分子。
The Jing family in Shanghai decided it was best to cooperate. Mrs. Jing took part in a film explaining her new outlook to other wives.
金锦之在小组会上说，过去丈夫不能掌握自己的命运，做妻子的命运更是没有保障。大家走上社会主义的光明大道，就可以放心了。
After liberation, the communists didn't like businesses like my husband's, so he was in trouble. Then we studied the party's policies and decided that joint ownership with the state was the only solution.
But for those who resisted, the changeover could be bloody. Youyi worked at a Beijing factory.
The big bosses in our factory were executed immediately. The less important ones were forced to reform through hard labor. We were asked to keep an eye on them. We hated them so much, we beat them if they didn't work hard enough. That's the way they treated us. In the past, they'd been the masters. Now, we were.
Women were given new rights at work and in marriage. The painful tradition of foot binding was abolished, and women were helped in the drive to end illiteracy. Gao Youyi from a village near Beijing was first a pupil, then a teacher.
Once I'd learned how, I could teach others to read. I didn't have a blackboard, so I used a wooden door. I wrote words on it and May copied them. Some of them had their babies with them, breastfeeding and studying at the same time. I can tell you, it was really hard.
创造出了许多好办法，这种每人一块小黑板的学习方法。当他们去地里干活的时候，就把自己的小黑板插在地头上，结合生产劳动来熟读生字，真正做到了学以致用。
To clean up China's dirt and disease, the communists launched mass campaigns and expected everyone to take part. Propaganda films were used to set the pace. Millions were inoculated against the epidemic diseases that had racked China. War was waged on old habits.
This is what is going on? 老爷爷，极力吐痰不文明，还会传染各种疾病呢。对对。 最好下次吐痰的时候要吐在手绢里、纸里或者垃圾箱里。
好，好，以后我们一定要注意了，一定要注意了。
老爷爷再见。
哦，再见了，再见。
所以这是有关我们每一个人的事情，要求人人都动起手来。
The pressure was inescapable. Party activists checked up on their neighbors' housework. Zhen Fuqin from the local street committee went from house to house.
We used to say, "Do you love your country?" The country is calling on you to carry out the public health campaign. Get on with it. When they heard this, people said, "Ah, if we don't do it well, that means we don't love our country." We used to go up the lane to check on people's housework, to see if they'd done it properly. We'd examine the tables to see if they